President Joe Biden has warned that if Vladimir Putin pushes into NATO countries, the U.S. will interfere, emphasizing that if his Russian counterpart is not stopped now, he will become emboldened. Biden, on the other hand, stated that he has no plans to meet with Putin, but he did speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy and told him that the U.S. will give humanitarian aid to alleviate the suffering of the Ukrainian people. Welcome to War Zone. If you don't want to miss out on any new political news, conflicts, battles, or anything else related to politics, then subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you will always be notified. In the middle of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. has sent more troops to protect NATO allies in Eastern Europe. Biden said that Putin has a lot more plans for Ukraine than he does. The former Soviet Union is what he wants to do, and he wants to do it again. This is about that. Then he said, I think his goals are very different from where the rest of the world has come. Asked Zelensky last night, Biden said he told him that the U.S. will help the Ukrainian people fight back against the Russians. We will help them by giving humanitarian aid to lessen their pain. He said that in the early days of this conflict, Russian propaganda will keep trying to hide the truth and say that its military operation against a made-up threat worked. We fight for freedom. We are these things, he said. This is what the U.S. says. It won't send troops into Ukraine to fight against Russian forces. Biden told Russia not to try to hack into U.S. businesses and infrastructure, and he told them not to do it. As I said last week, if Russia attacks our businesses or critical infrastructure, we will be ready to defend against them. The government and the private sector have been working together to strengthen our cyber defenses and improve our ability to fight back against Russia's cyber attacks for a long time now, he said. According to Biden, the U.S. sanctions on all Russian banks are of equal or even greater importance than barring Russia from SWIFT, which is a way to move money around the world quickly. It's always possible, but right now the rest of Europe doesn't want to do that, he said. There is no doubt that when a major nuclear power attacks or invades another country, the world will react. Markets can react all over the world, he said. The U.S. and its European allies put a lot of sanctions on Russia because it invaded Ukraine, so they did this to show their anger. Ukraine's airfields and fuel depots were hit by Russian bombers on Sunday. This was the next step in an invasion that has been slowed down by fierce resistance. In response to this, the United States and the European Union put Russia under strict sanctions. They also sent weapons and ammunition to help the outnumbered Ukrainians fight back. The Russian President, Vladimir Putin, wants the Ukrainian army to remove the leaders of the city of Kyiv, and he wants the army to do it. Key new sanctions hit Russia's central bank and cut off an unknown number of its banks from the SWIFT network, which is used to send money around. People from the U.S. and Europe made it clear that they were still working on putting the sanctions into place. They said that they would make sure that European natural gas purchases would not be affected by the sanctions. In a big move to hurt Russia's economy, the U.S. and its allies, like the EU and the UK, have decided to cut off some of Russia's banks from the global financial system, SWIFT. One of the world's most important banking messaging services is called SWIFT. It links more than 11,000 banks and other financial institutions in more than 200 countries, including India. A lot of banks use SWIFT, so taking them out would be a big cut. Russia is very dependent on the SWIFT system to send a lot of its oil and gas. Germany hasn't approved the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia because it isn't safe. This is how German Chancellor Olaf Scholz explained his decision. He said he took it because Russia's actions against Ukraine were a very serious break of international law. There is an undersea Nord Stream 2 pipeline that links Russia's gas to Europe through Germany. It has been completed but isn't yet running. One of them is 1,230 kilometers or 764 miles long. It runs under the Baltic Sea. A pipeline that runs from Russia to Germany's Baltic coast is called Nord Stream 2, and it goes through the Baltic Sea. The U.S. has put sanctions in place to cut off Russia's tech supply. President Joe Biden says that new U.S. export restrictions will cut Russia off from more than half of its high-tech supplies. Trying to modernize the military, the space program, shipping, and other industries will be harmed by this, he said, adding that it will strike a blow. Biden said that the high-tech limits will hurt long-term strategic goals because they will make it more difficult for them to compete economically. Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, said that there would be financial restrictions and export controls. Britain will also stop Russia's main airline, Aeroflot, from landing at British airports. A lot of European Union countries stopped Russian planes from flying in their airspace because they thought they were dangerous. The United Kingdom put out a notice saying that Russian airlines and flights linked to a Russian person can't fly in UK airspace or land at UK airports, with the exception of transatlantic flights. Estonia, Latvia, Slovenia, and Romania are some of the other countries that have banned Russian airlines from flying in their airspace. While that was going on, German officials said that the country is planning to close off its airspace to Russian planes. People in Germany fly Lufthansa. On Sunday, it said it was canceling flights to Russia and flying over Russian airspace because of Moscow's attack on Ukraine. US, EU, and UK restrictions on Russia's central bank will make it more difficult for the Kremlin to get its hands on more than $600 billion in cash. West wants to make it hard for Russia to keep the ruble from falling in value as Western sanctions get tighter. If that happens, it will hurt Russia's ability to keep the ruble from falling in value. Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have been frozen by the European Union. The EU has agreed to freeze their European assets. The EU made a unanimous decision as part of a larger sanctions package. This shows that Western countries are moving toward new and unusual ways to try to get Putin to stop the brutal invasion of Russia's neighbor and avoid a major war in Europe. Members of Russia's elite and their families, the Wagner Group, and major Russian banks are among the 58 people and groups that the U.S. has put sanctions on. People on the Russian Security Council, including key cabinet members, will also be hit with penalties. This is after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took part in a virtual meeting of the G7 industrialized countries. The Treasury Department says that the U.S. has put sanctions on big Russian banks that hold about 80% of the country's banking assets. The two biggest banks in Russia, Sberbank and VTB, are both owned by the government. The U.S. says that together they have almost $750 billion in assets, which is more than half of all the money in Russia. There are a lot of people who work at the banks that are being targeted. The U.S. is now cutting them off from the U.S. financial system and the U.S. dollar, so they can't get money from the U.S. The goal is to make it much more difficult for the banks and Russia to do simple business and trade with other countries, which is bad for both countries. The Champions League final was moved from St. Petersburg to Paris after Russia invaded Ukraine, so Russia lost the right to host the final. The men's final will still be held on May 28th, but now it will be at the 80,000-seat Stade de France. UEFA's executive committee made the decision to do this. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Formula One said it would be impossible to hold the race in Sochi at this time. The Russian Grand Prix was set to take place on September 25th. Alright everyone, this brings us to the end of our video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until then, take care, and we will be back with another video.